It's in our world now, and this time, there's no escape from the Mind Flayer. Experience the most terrifying moments of Netflix's Stranger Things Seasons 2 and 3 at the world's premier Halloween event. It's Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. Select nights September 6th through November 2nd. Save up to $52 on select nights. Visit HalloweenHorrorNights.com. Online only. Restrictions apply. Not recommended for children under 13.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Damn You Hollywood. I apologize for the longer intro, that was the wrong setting, but I'm not going to restart everything just for that, for my own lack of updates on Spreaker. Sorry. Just not going to do it. I will suffer through it. Alright, tonight we are down one Mark Radulich. He is a giant wuss, and would not, under any circumstances, watch even a PG-13 horror movie. Never mind that it would barely scare his son, who's like 5. He just wasn't going to have it, so he instead suffered through The Kitchen. And you can actually hear him, Jesse Starcher, and Pat Mullen do a split review of both the graphic novel that it's based on and the movie. And over on the latest edition of Source Material. And you know what? I don't get to gloat at the expense of Mark all that often. I really don't. But I'm going to. Because, boy, was that bad. Mark had nothing good to say about it.
Just remember, Jesse and Patrick had to suffer through it because you and I said no.
Look, I try not to stand on principle all that often. Just because it's... I just don't. I will complain frequently. But I will very infrequently actually just go, you know what, Mark, I'm not watching this. Just no. But I was not watching The Kitchen. I wasn't going to do it. And he said, fine. I said, I will find something else that's coming out. Oh, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is coming out that same day. I'm going to watch that. If you want to watch The Kitchen and we'll do a split review, fine. I'm not watching Melissa McCarthy, Tiffany Haddish, and Elizabeth Moss. I'm just not doing it. And he said, fine, Jesse and I will do that, and we'll talk about both of them, and you can have your... whatever stupid thing he said. And you know what? I made the right call. And I don't get to say that very often. I don't get to laugh at Mark. I'm going to laugh at him, and next week when he's back, I'm going to laugh at him again, publicly. So, I'm looking forward to that. But tonight we are reviewing the PG-13 horror anthology, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Now, since we are down Mark, I am not talking to myself. You already heard Alexis from Honeysuckle Rose Creations. She is back with us again. How you doing, Alexis?
Doing good. Just trying to keep the dogs from barking in the background. I apologize, actually, if you could hear Toby at all during the opening music. I was trying to kick him out of the office.
Yeah, that's fine. And back with us, he tends to show up when we do horror movies. Jason Teasley is here. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing good tonight. How you guys doing?
Better than Mark, who's now having to watch
Well,
wrestling.
I mean, if you kind of think about it, Mark kind of took the scarier horror movie this weekend anyway.
He took the more horrifying of the two, that's for sure.
Yeah, see, there's a difference between a legit scary movie and a movie that is scary.
He was scared that he was going to be seen watching it.
If I might quote him in his reaction to that movie, I have never run so fast out of a theater in my life.
Could be worse. We could have all had to go see Dora and the Lost City of Gold.
I would not have done that. I won't. Look, there's a lot of things I will do for the sake of podcasts and this network. I will not be the 33-year-old single guy sitting by himself watching Dora the Explorer on the big screen in a movie theater.
I was just about to start breaking out Meatloaf there. I would do anything for Mark, but I won't do that.
Look,
Well,
I went
I'm
and
pretty
saw
sure there was people in
Cinderella
there.
by myself when they did the live-action adaptation. I'm willing to go a fair distance. Dora the Explorer, too far. Not doing it.
You got to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, and the fact that he occasionally does butt me up against my line, given some of the other stuff I put up with, it does have to be there, otherwise I'm a giant pushover. And I'm only a moderately sized pushover.
I was going to say, you are a giant pushover.
Moderately sized. Not giant. I freely admit, I'm a moderately sized pushover. I can be cajoled into a lot of things. But
We sat through Dark Phoenix at Lion King, folks.
No, I knew what was up with those. I knew they were going to suck, but I also knew why they were on the schedule. I knew why we were going to see them. I didn't complain about those. I didn't say, please take them off the schedule, or no, I won't do it. Which I have in the past, and occasionally have reversed my position. Anyway, my lack of spine notwithstanding, we are here to talk about scary stories to tell in the dark. Now, before we get into the movie itself, this is based on one of three collection of short campfire-style horror stories. Excuse me. And so I'm curious about you two. I've never read any of those three. At least one of my brothers has read several of them. And when he saw it, he joked that he had some PTSD related to it because he saw at least one of the stories that kind of freaked him out when he was much, much younger. So, Alexis, I'll start with you. Again, I think we talked a little bit about this off air, but you don't have much of you didn't read any of the collections much growing up, did you?
No, I didn't. It was quite a few years before I really got into horror. I love scary movies now. I love Halloween. But when I was younger, that kind of stuff just really bothered me. It didn't sit well with me. So I didn't get into them at the appropriate age. I will say I had a lot of friends who were into them, but looking back on it, they would tell me that it wasn't so much the stories. It was those illustrations in that book.
Yeah, those are pretty freaky.
Yeah, which they tried famously to capture in this film, and we'll get to that. But these stories are so common I would say, in Americana that even if I didn't know of them, I have heard of them. We have a couple in the film from tonight, like The Big Toe or The Red Spot. I, again, hadn't read the books, but I knew those stories. I don't remember if I heard them in Campfire or on the Campfire. I don't know if I just heard them in passing or whatever, but I was familiar with them.
Jason, again, you're kind of into the horror scene. How about you? Would read any of these growing up? Get freaked out by the impressionistic illustrations kind of thing?
Surprisingly, I never read any of them personally, but you hear them around the campfire and stuff. I remember The Red Spot. I even remember a variation of The Jangly Man growing up, but personally, I never read them per se, but I had familiarity with them.
Say these stories are so famous that there was actually a parody of The Big Toe in an episode of My Little Pony about the grizzled old mare who lost her horseshoe.
All right. I'm sure the percentage of our audience that are Brony fans are cheering.
Sorry.
Everybody just
in all
ran to
fairness,
YouTube
go
to
for
look
it.
that up.
Look, I've never seen a single episode. Apparently, it jumped the shark after the 3rd season. I couldn't tell you whether that's true or not. But
I could tell you, but we've already, stalled long enough.
yeah, personally, I haven't read any of the books, but I believe I have heard almost all of them, if not all of them. As far as just the stories that were collected there, because I did a lot of camping as a kid. I have been into horror, and there's a lot of just very famous and just kind of urban legend, campfire story type of stories that are collected there. So I know most of them. I heard the vast majority of them, and when they announced this, and it was being produced by Del Toro and directed by a Norwegian director by the name of Andre Overdal, and I know I'm mispronouncing that. I can never remember what that accent means in Norwegian. I was pretty excited, actually, because this director has done a couple of other movies that I have very much enjoyed. I very much enjoyed Troll Hunter, which was his second major directorial thing, second or third. And as far as found footage films go, that's a really good one. A really nice mix of practical effects and CGI, which is something we'll also get here. And I really kind of dug The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which he also directed. So he's batting pretty well for me going into this, and oh yeah, he's doing The Long Walk. I am so excited. I'm really excited for that one, actually. That's one of my favorite Stephen King stories. So it's a director I'm interested in. Guillermo del Toro's produced it. So I had some relatively high hopes. And I didn't get exactly what I expected, but I think that one's on me in this instance rather than the movie itself. So, as for the plot of this movie, it's set primarily in the town of Mill Valley, Pennsylvania, where 3 teenagers, Stella, Augie, and Chuck, plot their revenge on the local high school bully who's terrorized them for years. They kind of get it, but it goes sideways, as pranks tend to do. While running from this, again, said bully, who's, what was his name? Tommy? Yeah, Tommy. And a couple of his cronies, they stumble across Ramon, who's a drifter who's coming through town. What turns out that he's dodging the draft. This whole thing is set in 1968. And for some reason, this movie goes out of its way to kind of imply that the actual horror in this story is the re-election of Richard Nixon. Which is profoundly inaccurate, but...
You feel better?
A little bit, yeah. I do. Anyway, so they all kind of run afoul of each other during this. Ramon and Stella start making googly eyes at each other, being, very hormonal teenagers. To close out this night, this is Halloween, they head to a local haunted house. They share a few local urban legends. They scare each other. They temporarily get locked into a secluded room in the basement where, legend has it, the family that used to live here locked the deranged youngest daughter up, who was responsible for the poisoning and disappearance and murder of several children in the area. They do the in-world equivalent of saying Bloody Mary 3 times to kind of reawaken the ghost of this person, Sarah Bellows, who winds up incidentally letting them out of the basement. They all go on about the rest of their lives. Ramon is stuck in town because Tommy trashed his car, being, a giant douchebag.
And also incredibly racist.
By our standards, incredibly racist, yes.
Well, he writes the words wetback on the dude's car.
Yeah, and I imagine that was a significantly more common term in the American Northeast in the 1960s. I mean, if they were doing this, I imagine there's an R-rated version of this same movie where it's a black guy instead. Things go worse from there. But it turns out that Stella, when she found a book down in that basement room and asked Sarah Bellows to tell her a story, has now doomed everyone who was in the house at the moment she uttered those words. It starts with Tommy, who in a recreation of the story Harold from, I believe that story itself is from the 3rd volume of the Scary Stories, because there's 3 different collections, and I believe it's from the 3rd. Tommy is tracked through his family's cornfield by a scarecrow that he deeply detests for unspecified reasons.
The thing is terrifying. You don't have to have a reason to hate it. It's before it starts moving, it's terrifying.
Fair enough. To each their own.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling, just the visual, seeing it in the middle of the day when it shows up.
No, I think it's more unsettling in the day when you can actually see everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's chased through his cornfield. He is stabbed through the chest with a pitchfork, but rather than blood, straw starts spewing out of him, and he is slowly transmogrified into a scarecrow that looks exactly like Harold. Everyone around town freaks out about this kid disappearing. Some suspicion falls on Ramon because A, he's Latino of some variety, B, he's a drifter, and C, there's documentation that he and Tommy had an altercation of some variety. Just not a really good setup. A lot of suspicion is just going to fall on you under those circumstances. Stella starts piecing together that the stories that are now appearing in the book she took from Sarah are coming to reality. This becomes abundantly clear when she and Ramon are just kind of looking at it, and it starts writing itself. It starts writing the story of the Big Toe, this time centered around one of her friends, Augie, who is, much like the kind of campfire story that it's based on, stalked through his house by a corpse who is incensed that he ate part of her. And I mean, in all fairness, if you're going to get pissed off at somebody, them consuming part of you is a fair enough reason. He is abducted from under his bed and dragged off to parts unknown, leaving great gouges along the hardwood floor. Really great visual. I just wish they'd have shown a couple of his fingernails torn off, but other than that...
Yeah, the point of view shots in that scene are insanely well done.
Yes.
I really like that.
So they call a bit of a meeting of everyone left who was in the house, which at this point is it's Stella, Ramon, Chuck, and Chuck's older sister, Ruth. They try to burn the book, but the book, much like asbestos, will not burn. And Chuck rather hilariously freaks out at it after they dump it into a burning barrel, let the fire burn out, tip it over, and the book is unharmed. It starts telling the story, this one centered around Ruth of the Red Spot. Ruth had been bitten by a spider, ostensibly, during their time in the haunted house. And as she's set to star in a musical for the high school theater group, the bump on her face where she was bitten continues swelling, and then as she's in the bathroom trying to do something about it, bursts, a bunch of spiders pop out and crawl all over her. Our intrepid band of Scooby Squad members show up and douse her with mop water to get all the spiders off, despite her being bitten multiple times and with now a large wound on the side of her face. She is not dead. She does look badly traumatized and as though her mind has suffered a pretty severe blow, and thousands of near fully grown spiders crawling out of a wound on your face. You know what? That'll do it. There you start looking into the history of Sarah Bellows and the family and just trying to find something that they can... some way of attacking this curse that seems to have befallen them. They find out that Sarah was... while she was locked away, she was not necessarily deranged. She was primarily an albino. There was some other bit of antiquated medical jargon that was thrown at her that I can't remember what it translates to in contemporary terms off the top of my head, so forgive me.
There was a lot of that when they start talking about her treatment at the asylum.
Yeah, it might have been... They might have just said this stuff again, because she was killed, she committed suicide, at least that's the legend, in the 1800s, and I think they had different classifications for what they called albinism, and she was a full albino, so there might have been some other word attesting to that. There might have been some acromegaly in there somewhere, I don't know off the top of my head. Anyway, it turns out again, she wasn't actually deranged. They meet with her, with a couple of the house servants, I imagine, because this is Pennsylvania, and the setting for that was all in the 1800s, so I don't think they would have been slaves. But a couple of the house servants, they find one, a very old one, who mentions to them that she didn't just spend her life locked away in the basement. They had actually put her in an asylum at one point. So they go to the asylum to chase down further leads, discover that she was primarily under the care of her brother. Giant conflict of interest. But, hey, 1800s medicine, what are you going to do? One of the cooler moments, actually, they find a wax cylinder that you play on a phonograph that I recognized immediately, but it's always nice to see one of those. Because they were the primary method of audio recordings back in the day, and... you can still find them, and they still work. So they listen to one of her therapy sessions that was recorded there, where her brother is trying to convince her to lie about what happened, because it wasn't her that was poisoning and killing the children, it was the family's paper mill that dumped mercury into the water, and they were just trying to cover it up because evil white male industrialists, I suppose. While Ramona and Stella are discovering that, poor Chuck winds up trying to escape from a few orderlies because he thinks he's next, and he is, and he's had some premonitions, and he's not going with them to their specific room. He's just trying to hide out. He's primarily afraid of a red room of some variety. He doesn't know if it's colored or if it's an acronym or something along those lines. And as he's trying to escape these orderlies hit the alarm, which bathes the entire facility in red light. So everything looks red. He is slowly but inexorably tracked down by the pale woman, a rather large, very creepily designed monster who just slowly cuts off his avenues of escape as he tries to run, and then winds up enveloping him into her body, leaving behind
like
nothing
the Michelin Man.
What was that, Jason?
I said she looked like the Michelin Man.
All right.
Looked like the Michelin Man after doing meth for 20 years.
Well, look, if the Michelin Man and the Asian girl from The Ring had a baby.
Oh, crap. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good crossbreed there.
Yeah.
If you haven't looked it up and just need some help with the visuals, look it up. They put some images of her out for the promotional material. Anyway, this leaves Stella and Ramon as the last two standing at the moment, with Ruthie still indisposed. They're arrested while they're at the local pokey, kind of just waiting to see what happens next, because Stella's not going to leave Ramon all alone, and Ramon we discover he's out drifting around because he's trying to dodge the draft to go serve in Vietnam. So they're going to turn him over to the military police or send him to jail. for dodging the draft. But that evening, we get the next instance of Sarah Bellows striking. This time it's the jangly man from the story of Me Tai Dodie Walker. Who this creature, which is a quasi-Frankenstein monster as kind of being that assembles itself from different separated body parts, shows up, kills the sheriff. I can't remember if it's the sheriff or just the local policeman, local chief of police kind of thing. I don't know the exact setup there, but kills him. Ramona and Stella manage to escape. They make for the Bellows estate to try and find some last-ditch way of undoing things. Ramon splits off to try and distract the jangly man because it's only going to track him down. Stella goes to the house and is sucked into the last story, the haunted house, where she is transported back to the 1800s. Has a few things that take place where she is in the position of Sarah, including being thrown into the basement room where she confronts the vengeful spirit of Sarah. Too many similar sounding names. Stella's able to pacify her by promising to actually tell the truth of what happened rather than simply repeat the urban legend. Let it know that she was innocent, and implores her somewhat not to remain the monster that her family turned her into. Sarah's amenable to this after Stella writes the truth of the story in her own blood in Sarah's storybook. With a primal scream of release, she dissipates into the ether. The jangly man disintegrates. Stella and Ramon are reunited. Ramon winds up enlisting, per his draft instruction, Stella and her father, played by the great Dean Norris. And there's a subplot with Stella and Dean that I do want to touch on briefly in a minute, but it doesn't pertain much to the actual narrative, so I'll talk about it in a second. Along with Ruthie, who seems to have overcome elements of her trauma enough to help them, now set out to try and find a way to rescue her friends because she knows that there's a way to get them out of wherever they are, and she is still seen in possession of Sarah's storybook as they drive off into the countryside to begin their quest to become the Winchester brothers from Supernatural, I suppose. Alright. That's about the size of it as far as that goes. So, Alexis, I'll start with you. What worked, what didn't work, what'd you like, what didn't you like? The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, I was really impressed with the kids' acting, with the exception of Dean Norris, who, if nothing else, we all know from Breaking Bad. This was mostly a cast of unknown actors. And I thought all of the kids were really, really good in this. Really enjoyed all of them. It's a PG-13 film, so we're not going to get crazy, nightmarish horror stuff. But the stuff they got away with, I'll admit, was pretty scary. The kid turning into the Scarecrow legit freaked me out. I mentioned before the scene with the big toe. They got a lot of really good POV shots of Augie as he's hiding, which is a very effective horror tool. They really used well. These effects were really good. Obviously, there was some CGI in this, and there were some moments where the CGI was, oh my god, could you not have, upped the budget just a little bit? But for the most part, I was very impressed with it, especially with Harold the Scarecrow. That was really good effects. I thought they kept the suspense going. There's a lot of complaints I've seen online with people saying that they should have just made this an anthology story. Something to keep it more in the lines of the original books instead of trying to find a common thread narrative to tie throughout. What do you guys think? Do you think that this movie would have been better had it been an actual anthology and kept a little bit closer to the book, or do you think it works fine with the common thread of Stella and her friends?
Jason, go ahead.
Uh, Personally, I think it would have worked better if it was shot like the movie Trick or Treat,
It's
um,
anthology
where
style.
yeah, like where you don't have you have the common thread, but you don't find it out till like later on.
Hmm.
That you just everything is just kind of you just got to kind of pick up the notes in the background rather than it being predominantly in your face. So yeah, I mean that type of anthology style would have worked, but I think it did well for what it was. I mean, it was kind of forced. I felt it was kind of forced to tie things together at some points, but I mean, it still worked. I mean, it wasn't like it drastically hampered the movie.
Yeah. Robert, what about you? Do you think this would have worked better as an anthology movie?
From a purely artistic standpoint, I suppose it could have. I don't think that if you're going for a wide release movie, that I'm just not sure there's the audience for a pure anthology movie like that doesn't release on a streaming platform. So giving us a single kind of cohesive narrative that is broken up the way that it was to kind of introduce the anthology elements to it, I thought was a decent enough medium ground to kind of bring in a bunch of disparate stories, but also not jump around and not give the audience time to kind of connect with the characters on any sort of in a real way.
Yeah. Part of me was wondering midway through watching this movie, I thought to myself, could this have been better if it was released on Netflix or Hulu, as more of an anthology? But then I thought, no, this is a film that is brimming with atmosphere, and it is best enjoyed in a dark theater. This is a movie you just want to completely absorb yourself into. And again, PG-13, but I do stand by that. I think this was a very good, scary movie to introduce to younger kids who are just starting to get into horror films. Kind of test the water a little bit, see if this is something that they can handle.
Yeah, I think it would be a great gateway maybe to the horror genre.
Mm-hmm. I could even see this becoming a staple for Halloween movies for younger kids.
Yeah, and I mean they're pretty clearly setting up for with the way they ended it. They are kind of doing a bit of the sequel bait thing, which not my favorite thing in the world, but there's a lot of these stories. Again, there's 3 different collections. Each one contains 20 some odd of these. They're very short stories. So it makes you have enough material in theory to, pump out several of these or variations thereof for the next few years. So if you can kind of franchise this property, they're going to give it a go.
It was a bit of a bold move, I would say, to not have everything wrap up at the end. You've still got Tommy, Chuck, and Augie. Well, Tommy's not really missing. He is a scarecrow now. But Augie and Chuck are still missing. And I was kind of wondering, so are these kids just going to suddenly pop back, or are we going to do like the Jumanji ending where they suddenly go back in time to before they took the book? But no, they have the kids still missing. And that takes a lot of balls.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is not a happy ending necessarily. It is somewhat upbeat, but it's not. And they all lived happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jason, what'd you think?
I liked it. I mean, it brought back, like we talked off air, it brought back a lot of memories from when I was younger, growing up and watching Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark? That kind of got that little bit of feel and nostalgia for me. And like Lex said, it is a good gateway movie to introduce a younger audience to the horror genre. I love the scarecrow aspect. I was actually creeped out, and I know this is going to sound weird, during the red spot where she's in the bathroom and the little spider leg comes out and wiggles.
Ugh.
That creeped me out. I mean, it was just like, it was a little unsettling for me, and I know that sounds stupid because it's just something that minute, but just the fact that it gives you that little bit of unsettling, like, yeah, there's something alive in your face, rather than it's just being, you see it move and then you just see that one little leg come out and she goes to touch it and it wiggles. It kind of got a little for me, but
yeah,
overall,
anyone who is deathly afraid of spiders is not going to get through this movie in one piece.
Yeah, you're going to be like a little unnerved by that, just how that plays out. The CGI was, like I said, in some like we pointed out already, some parts it was like, you could have dialed it in a little bit better, but in some aspects it was great. So I mean, the Jangly Man was the best part. I liked about it is when he came down the chimney and the head just comes down. Just that I kind of got a chuckle out of that, though it was supposed to be like unnerving, but I kind of liked it. And then you see how all that plays out. Personally, I don't like how the fact they ended it the way they did. I wish they would have just like kind of left it more like not so predominant that, oh yeah, we're going to try to go for a sequel. Just kind of leave you on like a cliffhanger rather than, have them trying to figure out if there's a way or if they're gone for good. And then just end the movie. Rather than just have them right off into the sunset, like, oh yeah, here, we're going to be coming after your money again in a year or two.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of sequel bait as a general rule, but I can live with this one, I suppose. It's not the worst, and they at least kind of set up a basic narrative premise to allow it to go that way. Personally, again, there's a few instances of CGI that are a little bit yeesh. Some parts with the Jangly Man are a little bit cringeworthy. The spiders, when they start crawling out of Ruth's face, yeah, a little bit not as bad as... there's that one scene from Crawl that had kind of the same bit that looked like just a bad Instagram filter. This looked better than that. But still not great. And I get that spiders can be hard to animate, and you don't want to actually throw a bunch of spiders on this poor girl. So she moves around. They do enough. There's enough kind of visual trickery to make it acceptable as a general rule, but again, that wasn't all that great. This movie's kind of at its best when it goes more practical, and again, one of the things this director does very well, and at least given his body of work thus far, is blend CGI with practical effects quite well, because I believe the Scarecrow was mostly practical. The corpse that stalks Augie is practical, and the Pale Woman is practical. And the Jangly Man, I believe, in places is done practically rather than CGI'd. And again, the director does a pretty good job of blending those elements together. So, a lot of credit there. I'll echo Alexis. Whenever you go with younger actors, and these are younger actors, you're taking a gamble. And it paid off in this instance. Nobody does anything bad. No one just seems like they were just reading from a cue card, which is a step up from a lot of other movies featuring actors of about the same age range. So, credit there. Again, I would be interested to... Let me preface this. I don't have a problem with PG-13 horror. I think if your horror movie leans too hard on things that make it, R-rated, an abundance of gore, a lot of profanity, copious nudity, etc., 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 that's a little bit on the lazy side. So, any writer or director that can elicit a similar reaction within the restrictions of something that will be rated PG-13, I believe I think that's a mark of superior skill. So, I don't have anything against PG-13 horror. I would be curious to see a version of this movie that's rated R, just for a kind of compare and contrast thing. It also does somewhat defeat the purpose, because the audience for this movie is fairly young. I mean, they go PG-13 with it, and I did not see this in a packed theater by any stretch of the imagination. It was 11 on a Tuesday afternoon, so I try to go to near-empty theaters. I don't like people. But the other people who were in the theater with me were predominantly, teenagers, young teenagers. A few preteens, I think, as well. So that seems to be more the audience for this movie, and again, if some of the people around me were any indication, it's largely successful. So, it seems to have aimed for its audience quite well. It seems to have found it. And I don't have too many complaints about it. I mean, it's a short movie. It's little over 90 minutes. I think all things considered. It's very accessible to, any age, like north of 10. And even, a jaded old, horror junkie like me can find some enjoyment out of it. So I was largely fine with it. So, all right, last bit here, and then we're going to move on to the money and other discussions. Of kind of the sub-stories, because again, this is, while not a true anthology movie, does have some of the same feel to it. So, Alexis and then Jason, what was your favorite of the, again, kind of the sub-stories, if you will, from this movie?
Mine's a tie. The one that got me, I'd say, the most unsettled was the big toe. That was really well done. It was very scary, and I nearly puked up my popcorn when the kid pulls the big toe out of his mouth, and then you see the eye and the other parts in the stew. That was so disgusting. And again, I've mentioned this at least twice now. They got some amazing POV shots of Augie hiding under his bed. You hear his heavy breathing. You can hear the creak of the wood. It's so well done. And even if I'm not crazy about a jump scare, that scare of the monster actually being under the bed with him, that was freaky as hell. But I think the one that actually disturbed me the most, believe it or not, was the last one with Stella, the haunted house story, where she is seen as Sarah running through the house with the family chasing after her. Because there is something truly horrible about this girl who was trying to escape, and her family members, her father, her brother, her mother, her grandmother, her elderly blind grandmother who's sitting upstairs in a chair, all saying, "She's in here, get her, stop her," and they're like, "She knows about the mercury, and you don't deserve the light," throwing her in a room and turning off the lights in there. That was horrible, and it really gets to you.
All right. Jason?
I have a tie too, but they're not. They're two separate ones. Mine was the Harold the Scarecrow, of course, simply because, to me, I guess it was how I grew up. Cornfields creep me out. Blame Children of the Corn. You can go on that, and cornfields creep me out, and scarecrows are associated with cornfields, so add that little dig in there as well. So that one was probably up there. I honestly have to go with the fact of the red spot. Simply because it was the one that got me the most, unsettled with, like I said, with the leg coming out and twitching, and just anything. I have a thing about, I don't like my face touched, period. And my daughter exploits that and pushes me to where I want to throw her through the house, and she'll do it just to annoy me. But I can't stand my face touched, and just having something like that and just watching it grow with each cut back to it, and then you see the movement in it, and you're like, oh God, and then you see the leg come out and just kind of twitch, and it's like, oh God, and then you just see it burst, and all the spiders cover her face, and I'm like, oh, lucky for me, I think there was only like 5 people in the theater with me, or like 3 people were about my age, and then there was like 2 13, 14-year-old boys sitting way down front. So I was all right when, I kind of gasped and jumped and kind of got that little uneasiness to me. But yeah, I mean, those are my 2 that were my favorites.
All right, I'm going to cite one, like the one that neither of you did here, so because I think the one that came closest to actually, getting a scare reaction was probably Big Toe, just because it's very well crafted. It's very well set up in the traditional, slow build, quiet motions, point of view shots. So, I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a jump scare, but jump scares used correctly are a great addition to a horror movie. When they're all you've got, it's lazy. Because anyone can be startled by a loud noise following a period of quiet. It's not that hard. But I think my favorite one was actually the Pale Lady. Just because that entire scene, as soon as the red lights come on and everything turns red, I could not help but think that this director was deliberately channeling his inner Kubrick. There's just so many great camera shots from that sequence where the creature starts off far away, and our protagonist, I believe it's Chuck, isn't exactly sure about it. He's not freaking out just yet, like, okay, we're going back the other way now, and turns around and he looks direct to camera. Then we cut to his perspective, and nope, it's over there too, and oh crap, we're going this way now. And you get through a doorway and you look right, and oh, there it is, and it's always getting closer. There's a few there's at least one really nice shot where he comes into a room that kind of splits off like a Y, and he goes to the right, and as the camera just kind of pans around to follow him a little bit, as it kind of hits the angle so we get around the door jamb, we see the creature still moving towards him from that direction. There's just a lot of really, really fun camera work in this one. And I'm a big fan of that. And I was really kind of hoping that when she got to him, she'd open the extra wide mouth and it would be full of teeth and she'd eat him. But there's something kind of quietly horrific about just being inexorably pulled into this mass of flesh and just stopping to exist.
The absorption.
That's pretty. That's the kind of stuff that it may not scare you the same way as it's happening, but it kind of sticks in the back of your head a bit more too.
I'll give you that. I have a feeling that if I had seen this movie as a kid, the Pale Lady would be the scene that gave me the most nightmares.
I think that one also does, because he mentions in the build-up to that scene that he's been having nightmares about the Pale Lady telling him this is an evil place and he should run. That whole sequence to me is probably the most reminiscent of an actual nightmare. The kind where you're running, but you can never quite run fast enough, or your legs won't work. Or you've got a gun and you're shooting at something point blank, but for whatever reason you can't seem to hit the broadside of a barn. And there's a very, very just kind of unsettling inevitability to that whole sequence that kind of it settles with me, at least. So again, credit to the director, credit to the all parties involved. Solid movie, pretty decent recommendation. If you like horror, if you want to introduce your kids to stuff in the horror genre, good way to go about it.
Nothing
and
else.
I like the fact.
I'm sorry. Go
ahead,
Jason.
Alexa. No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just like I said. I think this could be a really good staple of Halloween. This is a movie that I could easily see putting on, popping some popcorn, turning off all the lights, and enjoying around that time of year.
And I like it simply because, I mean, all three of us, you know, like a horror movie, but we came at it at liking three totally different aspects of the movie, which kind of is a good thing because what the stories I like wasn't how wasn't one of your favorites, and that's a sign of a good movie. We all three took away different things from a movie, but overall, I think we collectively liked it.
Yeah, I don't have too many complaints.
Me neither. I mean, again, we weren't the exact target audience for this. We're much older than I think this movie was aiming for, but I don't think any of us walked out saying, ugh, there's 2 hours of my life we'll never get back.
Exactly. I mean, even with my senior citizen discount, I mean, I wasn't complaining about the price.
I was really, again, one of the reasons when I heard about the setting for this movie, I was kind of hoping Mark was going to be on so I could ask him because he was, of course, about the age of the deputy, the police officer here in 1968. If I might dig at Mark's age a little bit there.
I think no, Mark's older than me. I think
Mark's 10 years older than I am, so he's 43, 44.
Okay, yeah, he's older than me by 2 years. I turned 41 in next Thursday, so.
So, I will say this: if I wanted to get really nitpicky, and I have been known to on occasion, there's a lot of dialogue and speech patterns that are very much 2019 that they have these characters use, but then occasionally seem to remember that, oh yeah, we're setting this in 1968, so let's throw in a few bits of other lingo. And it's a little bit jarring. I really wish they'd committed one way or the other on that, rather than kind of flip-flopping the way they did. But, again, real minor nitpick, and you kind of have to be me to pay attention to stuff like that, so... minor complaint. Alright, let's talk about the money. Why is Dean Norris listed as... whatever. This movie had a budget of $28 million, relatively low. And after its weekend debut, where it debuted at number 2, we'll get into the full weekend in a minute, has taken in $25.8 million. I believe that's mostly domestic.
Yeah, I don't think it's opened overseas yet.
Yeah, it was released theatrically in the United States, so if it's going to appear in certain places overseas, that has not yet been reported. So again, for those of you keeping score, and if you listen to this podcast, you do, given the way studios and theaters tend to split ticket sales, you need to make a movie needs to basically double its budget to be profitable, and that tends to not include marketing, which, I don't know, certain movies they seem to count it, some they don't. So for this movie to really make money, it's going to want to be about the, high 50s to low 60s. And I think it'll probably get there. There's not a lot of... It's got another week, I think, or another 2 weeks before it comes out. And of course,
I was going to say, this is the type of movie that will pick up steam with word of mouth, rather than being really highly anticipated. So the week 2 numbers will probably be right around the same as opening weekend.
It's also thankfully got a pretty good nostalgic factor going. You get a lot of people in our age demographic who, again, they're not the ones this movie's targeting, but they read the books when they were kids, so obviously they want to go see this.
Yeah, I imagine it'll wind up being a find again, especially once it kind of releases overseas, and because while there's some distinctly American components to it, this is also, a lot of this is very translatable to other places, so We're not talking, a top 10 movie at the end of the year, but this will probably be decently profitable after things are said and done. And again, it's also the kind of movie that might hang around for a lot longer than some of the other, movies that have a big splash opening and then just fade immediately.
It's currently sitting at 81% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yep.
That's high enough to get it a fresh score.
All right, so let's go over the box office weekend. Number 1 was Hobbs & Shaw, retaining its spot. Hobbs & Shaw has a total gross of $108 million or so, which is actually not all that good. We talked about this a little bit last week when Mark and I reviewed the movie. Given the budget for that thing, which if you include advertisement was $360, I think, million, give or take, that thing basically needs to hit $1 billion. Hang on, there's no way that's accurate. I have to double check this.
I think my favorite review so far of Hobbs & Shaw has been, it's like the live-action Bugs Bunny Daffy Duck movie we didn't know we needed.
I'd rather have a live-action Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck movie.
You saw it, though. Am I wrong? Is the review wrong?
I still like Mark pointing out last week when we was on here, Calvin and Hobbes would have been much better.
I think the way Mark had kind of been pitching this was, what if the Iron Fist and Power Man were action stars and the Iron Fist was British? Where they team up to take down Black Superman in an epic Marvel DC crossover event, and I wanted to throw something at him.
So, well, we did go on a tangent trying to put a new movie out in the universe, and you got mad at us.
Yeah, something like that. So Hobbs & Shaw, yeah, box office total for its run thus far, yeah, that number might just be domestic instead of worldwide. Anyway, its worldwide take thus far is $335 million. Again, it's got a ways to go. That thing has to hit... It's got to hit nearly $1 billion to be profitable. So, that one's got Hobbs & Shaw has a ways to go yet. Coming in at number 2 was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark with the aforementioned 20-some-odd million. Lion King fell from 2 to 3 and is now significantly north of $1 billion.
Shoot me now.
Yeah, it's solidly number 2 for the year at $1.339 billion.
And it is officially the highest grossing animated film of all time.
Yeah, that bothers me.
Me too.
I mean, it's an accurate descriptor.
It's like, I'm not a huge fan of Frozen, but the fact that this is the movie that took Frozen's title just really upsets me.
Lion King, the Lion King remake was better than Frozen. Frozen's a somewhat decent musical, but a terrible movie. Even as a musical, it's only got like 2 good songs.
Yeah, I'm definitely the person who walked away saying Moana was better.
It was.
Hey, I like Moana.
Oh, I love Moana. It's one of my favorite recent Disney movies.
It was the first movie I ever took my daughter to. It was the first time me and her went to the movies together was to see that.
Nice.
You chose something featuring The Rock. Good choice.
And now every time she does something, she looks at me and goes, "You're welcome."
All right, debuting at number 4, we have Dora and the Lost City of Gold, which took in $17 million and change.
Yeah, what did Mark say about that? That's the Indiana Jones sequel we didn't know we needed.
Mark's
it was the third best.
It's the third best Indiana Jones movie.
There you go.
Which is not accurate.
Or the second best Tomb Raider movie.
Look, I'm prepared to fight people over this one. First of all, Temple of Doom is not as bad as people remember it. It suffers more by comparison, falling between Raiders and Last Crusade, which are 2 nearly perfect movies. fact, I'd argue Raiders is perfect. For what
You
it
love
is.
Crystal Skull. Don't lie.
Okay, look, Crystal Skull barely exists. But I'm also of the opinion that if you want to have an actual discussion of spiritual successors to Indiana Jones, the Uncharted games come in at numbers, like, either numbers 3 through 7 or 4 through 8, depending on how you want to, depending on what you're feeling the Temple of Doom are.
They're actually doing the Uncharted games as a movie coming out soon.
They keep saying that. I keep refusing to believe it until it actually comes out.
And unfortunately, Nathan Fillion's too old to play Drake.
Look, as long as it's not Mark Wahlberg, I'm probably going to be okay.
What if it's Zac Efron?
Why if they dust Shyla off for it?
You know, the sad thing is, if they actually shot the last one first, Nathan Fillion is old enough to be old Nathan Drake from A Thief's End.
You know what? Nathan Fillion's got enough fans. You could probably just say he's young Nathan Drake, and we'll all say, we believe it.
That, or they can just digitally de-age him a little bit. They don't even
Hell,
have to do it
there's
digitally. He's aged incredibly well. You could just do it practically.
Yeah, hell, there's people who are still clamoring for him to play Hal Jordan.
Would have been a good I always thought he'd have been a better Booster Gold.
Yeah, I could have seen Mr. Gold.
Did you see the Justice League movie Doom that he did the voice of Hal Jordan?
Yeah, I've
yes.
seen that.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite DC animated movies.
It is really good.
So, falling from 3 to 5 is Once Upon a Time in Hollyland.
Hollyland.
I was gonna go Hollywoodland, but that's a movie starring Adrian Brody. Debuting at number 6 is The Art of Racing in the Rain. Not a good debut for... Look, we all love dogs, but there's only so much, inside the dog's head movies that we're going to really kind of tolerate, and we might be pushing up against it.
And hasn't it been, like, overly saturated this year for those type of movies?
Little bit.
Yeah, did we really need A Dog's Journey? I don't think we needed that sequel.
We didn't. Also debuting in a crater at number 7 is The Kitchen, which took in $5 million, and no one saw except for Mark, and no one liked, apart from apparently in the latest source material. After they're kind of done talking a little bit about the movie, Mark decides he has to put Pat and Jesse through what he normally puts me through. So he reads some positive reviews of that, and they're just terrible.
And I haven't got to that part yet, but I'm sure Pat's head's ready to explode.
Considering the fact that Mark wanted to see The Kitchen over Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, there's only one appropriate response to that man.
Look, I'm still waiting for what he comes up with in a couple of weeks to get out of it. Last time it was a hurricane.
I can always see that movie.
Oh, me neither.
I can't believe the three of us will be helming that. Oh, I know we're also going to do Ready or Not. Are we also doing Knives Out? I saw the trailer for that with this.
I might be persuaded to do that, depending on when it comes out and what we have kind of going on around it. Daniel Craig is the eccentric detective. Looks like money.
And I'm always I love a good mystery and a good whodunit story. And this has got a killer
especially one coming
cap.
from Rian Johnson, because if there's anyone who's definitely willing to subvert expectations.
Was that a Last Jedi joke?
No, it's a genuine. It's one of the things I like about his work.
You gotta kind of test the waters with Robert. You never know when the sarcasm comes out.
Very true.
I get genuine compliment. He's not afraid to go against the grain if he thinks that's what is in the best interest of this narrative he's telling. So I'm completely okay with that. if we can find space on the schedule or just time for the three of us to get together, and Mark says, fine, do what you want. I don't like British people, so I won't review a Daniel Craig movie if it's not James Bond.
Has he actually said that?
No.
I'm pretty sure that would be his excuse.
No, Mark won't see a movie with subtitles.
Well, I will say this. I twisted Mark's arm into watching a sci-fi movie with me and reviewing it.
That's true.
Tidal wave.
We are doing Zombie Tidal Wave.
I wish you the best of luck with that.
When are you guys doing that one?
August 30th.
Let me check my schedule. I might join you.
You have both of you have a cordial invite. We've already determined Robert will rather gouge out his eyeballs.
Jason, are you joining us for the Banana Splits movie?
I didn't know there was a Banana Splits movie.
Oh, we're doing a midday review of it because I begged Mark to put it on the schedule. It's a Banana Splits horror movie coming to Sci-Fi Channel.
When is this?
I want to say we're reviewing it on the 27th, but I need to double check the schedule. Plug.
Yeah, the schedule. You're not getting a long schedule from me, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I can do to the 30th, and then, I'll start the new job Monday. So,
congrats on the new job.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait.
All right, Spider-Man Far From Home fell from 4 to 8. Toy Story 4 fell from 5 to 9. Bring the Soul the movie, I have no idea what this is, debuted at number 10. Debuting at number 11 is Brian Banks. Quasi-true story, I suppose, that one. I'm not up to date on all of it. I just looked at the guy in the lead and went, oh, hey, Hardison. Reference to an obscure television show I'm sure no one else got. The Farewell fell from 7 to 12. Yesterday, that took a drop. Fell from 6 all the way to 13.
Ouch. I've heard that's actually one of the best movies of the year.
I have not heard that. So, Aladdin fell from 9 to 14. Crawl fell from 8 to 15. The Secret Life of Pets dropped from 11 to 16. Annabelle Comes Home fell from 10 to 17. Maiden fell from 17 to 18. And Mentor fell from 18 to 19. And Avengers Endgame dropped from 14 to 20. Also somewhat cratering outside of the top 20 on its debut was the independent drama starring Shitty LaBeef, The Peanut Butter Falcon.
The what?
Have you not look up a trailer for it? Okay, that's all I can tell you. I cannot do it justice.
Okay.
I was gonna say you've been waiting all week to drop that reference, haven't you?
What?
Shitty LaBeef.
Not really. I just saw it on the list here when it debuted, and I always have to get in a little dig at Shia LaBeouf on occasion. So anyway, that was our debut. Where we stand for the year, no real change. The Avengers Endgame is king of the world with $2.795 billion. Lion King at number 2, $1.339 billion. Captain Marvel, number 3 at $1.128 billion. Spider-Man Far From Home, listed as Sony. We all know it's Disney. $1.097 billion. Aladdin looks like it's going to settle in around $1.035 billion. So wildly successful.
All hail the mouse.
Toy Story 4, $990 million. So that looks like it's going to end short of the $1 billion, but still a huge success. The Wandering Earth, sitting at number 7, which, as Mark would say, is a Chinese Chinaman movie. $699 million. How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World at number 8, $519 million. A new movie, I think this is relatively new to the top list. Another exclusively Chinese movie. Nezha, I'm probably mispronouncing that, from Beijing Enlight. $512 million, and rounding out the top 10, I have a blatant line of code that means nothing on my list, so I'm kidding. It's Detective Pikachu, $431 million. That will go away within the next 2 weeks, I imagine. So that's where we are with the money so far, everyone. It continues to be the decade of Disney, I suppose. So it's the mouse's world. We just have to bend the knee. All right, that will bring us to everyone's least favorite bit, but Mark asked that we continue it in his absence. I am happy to oblige him in this instance. Alexis, I believe you're doing the honors of trolling through the Rotten Tomatoes reviews for this one.
Yeah, do I have to wait for a musical cue on this one?
No, I don't have it, and
okay.
You're fine.
Ever since I screwed up and talked through the musical reviews and the Captain Marvel review, I have been absolutely terrified of doing that again.
Look, by Mark's own admission, he needs a better cue for that, so don't worry about it.
Okay, this was actually kind of hard to find reviews that really we could bring up because so many of them, they agree with us. There's a lot of people's like, well, it doesn't break any new ground. Plenty of vintage fun to be had with kids who feel their way through life's impending fears and live to tell the tale. And that's from RogerEbert.com. So there's a lot. There weren't that many reviews here to really bring up, but I did find a few. Okay. Coming from Mark Dushik, I can't pronounce this guy's last name. From
How's
Mark
it spelled?
Reviews Movies. Dujsik.
Okay, I do believe I remember this gentleman. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but I think we've talked about him before once or twice.
Scary stories to tell in the dark, possesses some eerie atmosphere. ... It's also mostly a pedestrian horror story that never lives up to its potential.
I'm curious what he thinks the potential is, especially with the PG-13 limitation placed on it, which again, not inherently a bad thing. But if you were expecting a gore fest, I mean, the rating itself should include you in that not so much.
Okay, this one actually does make me laugh. Martin Thomas from Double Toasted. It's like the Lucky Charms of horror tropes.
Well, he's certainly toasted if he's referencing Lucky Charms in his movie reviews. I assume he had a case of the munchies, that's the cereal of choice, and he went, hey, I can put this in writing.
I'm guessing he means that it's all sugar, no substance, I guess.
Either that, or it's a reference to trying to find the marshmallows in the midst of the rice cereal. I don't know.
Yeah, I never actually liked Lucky Charms as a kid. I don't like marshmallow cereals. I hate the way those things feel in my teeth. I just know that I did make charm bracelets out of the marshmallows a couple years ago.
Well, as long as you keep them away from your dog, you're fine.
I would hope so. I coat them with enough gloss so they don't melt off your wrists. Okay, Jason Escamilla from Eskimo TV. Hollow characters, an uncreative story, and an antagonist who lacks a convincing motive.
Well, I mean, I think the stories had substance. I don't think they were that hollow. I mean, they could have been tied together a little bit better, but I mean, he's a douchebag that lives in his mom's basement that is unhappy in life.
Well, I just love that he writes an uncreative story. It's like these are based around a classic campfire story, you know?
Yeah,
it's like making fun of a Stephen King novel for, all those classic movie tropes. He invented those movie tropes.
If you haven't heard these stories in some fashion or another, you just haven't ever been told a horror story to begin with, so...
Yeah,
there's only so much liberty you're going to take creatively with people who are paying to see a representation of something they know.
Yeah, I mean, you see variations of these stories all over the place. So, I mean, how much more can you do? I mean, you want to stay close to the source material for nostalgic value, for like we've harped on many times, for people of our age. But you also want to, introduce these kids to not only the movie, but possibly introduce them to the books and get a resurgence of the books. So, I mean, you don't have, like you say, you don't have very many liberties you can take.
I'd like to add this gentleman also misspelled hollow in hollow characters.
That surprises me not at all, considering that another part of his complaints was the vengeful ghost didn't have an appropriate motivation to be vengeful. I mean, really? The whole falsely convicted, tortured into suicide, or quietly killed and then passed off as suicide, all while desperately trying to prove your own innocence and expose danger to the town and children that your own family has heaped upon them. You don't think that's going to cause some vestige of your mortal coil to stick around and just wreak unholy vengeance on anything it comes across? Because, I don't know, kind of works for me.
I did actually like I forgot to mention this. I did like the part where they're going through the past stories in the book, and you find out through that she took out her family members after she died through the book. We don't see it, but you see their names in the stories, and you realize what happened. I really like that.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
All right. Next one, James Clay from Fresh Fiction. Scary stories rest somewhere inside the popularity of Stephen King and Stranger Things to a frustrating degree.
That seems like an entirely hollow complaint. First of all, you've cut there's a large swath of area that exists between the one extreme of Stephen King and the other, Stranger Things is not the other extreme end of the spectrum, but it's closer to the very family-friendly side of things.
Yeah, it's a nice medium.
I mean, yeah, is your complaint that it strikes a happy medium, and you'd rather it were? How dare a movie that's trying to be balanced actually find balance? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
Speaking of happy medium, Karen Hahn from Polygon. The movie tries to do too much, ultimately failing to do any of it well. If you'll excuse the pun, it just can't seem to find a happy medium. And I don't get where the pun is.
Yeah, what? I guess.
I'm going to assume that segment was just copy and pasted from a review of Wrinkle in Time, where Zach Galifianakis actually plays a character called the Happy Medium.
Well, I was going to go with the whole fact that it was a quote unquote, she was being a quote unquote medium between the spirit world and the real world.
I think you're giving the writer too much credit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that I could see that she's reaching for.
Yeah, I think she's just recycling. I think the author there is just recycling previous lines and didn't bother to try and edit them.
All right, this one actually kind of cheeses me off. Owen Gleiberman from Variety.
Oh, Variety.
Yeah, I know. The emotions of the stories have been lost. We could be watching the standard ghoulish CGI effects that take place in any horror movie of the week. Yeah, no, that's getting a giant middle finger from me, because again, there were some parts where, the CGI was a little hokey, but for the most part, I think we are in agreement. These are some damn good scary effects.
Yeah, it also ignores the very effective practical effects at various places. Mm-hmm. And you know what, buddy? I'm imagining you don't actually watch the horror movie of the week. Because if you did, there's so much worse that I don't mean this overly disparagingly, because a lot of these movies are self-aware of what they are. But if you watch the average sci-fi horror movie, and sci-fi, I mean the Sci-Fi Network. And in a few more weeks, Jason will be talking about one of those. You will see the type of CGI that makes you go, wow, someone in their second year of college did this over the weekend while cramming for finals. this looks beautiful by comparison. But no, sir, you have not suffered, and now just seek to cast aspersions on those of us that have. Shame on you.
Seriously, some of us have sat through at least 3 Sharknadoes.
If you want to see the absolute worst movie and worst CGI, look up The Pyramid.
That's pretty bad.
It is the only movie that I went in and seen for free, and I demanded money back.
Some of us have seen Congo, when they tried to CGI apes and the technology didn't actually exist to CGI hair. Not a joke. Actually a thing that happened.
See, every time you bring up Congo, every time you mention Congo, I just think of that scene from Freakazoid. Okay, so that's a real gorilla. No, that's a guy in a suit. So that's a real gorilla. No, that's a guy in a suit. How can you tell? It's obvious.
Freakazoid. You were never actually a superhero.
Hey, I love that show.
Like the show, too, he's not a hero.
Freakazoid was pretty solid back in the day.
Okay, how many? I've got 4 more of these. Do you want me to go through all 4 of them? Or?
Yeah, sure, we got time.
Okay, Dustin Chase from the Texas Art and Film. Unsure why it took 5 different writers to pen this many stereotypes and genre tropes into one of the year's most forgettable scary movies.
Have you even seen the other forgettable scary movies this year?
Yeah.
More importantly, would you remember if you had?
Again,
some
there's
of
a few out there.
Look, a few of these they tread very clearly over worn territory because they are the foundational stories that these things spring from, so you're not going to see a tremendous amount of innovation there. A lot of the innovation, such as it is execution rather than narrative. But, hey, you're only a critic, so why would you talk about actual technical filmmaking when instead you can just say, I wasn't thrilled with the way it was written? Because you've never actually done anything related to filmmaking, you just write. And bad.
This person comes off to seem to me like he's never got the experience Goosebumps, or Are You Afraid of the Dark, or, stuff like that our generation and people like us can look back and compare to and be like, oh yeah, and know the stories, know the books and everything where it originated from. So, come on, man.
Truth be told, the only obvious stereotype I thought this movie had was Tommy the bully.
Again, when you get to the elements of some of the characters being a bit broadly drawn, sure, there's a bunch of them that are also cannon fodder and aren't on screen long enough to show more of themselves.
I'll give you that. All right, Matt Oakes from Silver Screen Riot. As much as the children performances aren't really living up to their end of the bargain, the script has some major issues of its own to overcome.
Oh, shut up. You're objectively wrong.
Yeah, again, these were all really good kid actors.
Again, are any of them winning Oscars? No, but none of them took me out of the movie. Again, none of them seem like they're reading from a cue card just off screen.
They were at least somewhat engaging. They're not chewing up scenery, but they're not, dragging stuff out either.
All right, Paul Chambers from Movie Chambers. The Teen Monster Fest starts slow and drags throughout, failing to generate any sustained suspense.
I think there's a bit of truth there, and part of that is kind of the anthology style that elements of this are presented in means that during the downtime we know everyone's kind of safe. And I think there's a degree of validity in that point. That said, I don't think it's enough to appreciably mar the rest of the movie.
I'll give you that. Horror movies do unfortunately have the worst trouble with pacing. Because you have to stop everything for a while every now and then to let the audience breathe. You can't constantly have characters running for their lives the whole time. Occasionally, you have to stop.
Yeah, I mean, building constant tension throughout an entire movie is, I think, the closest I've seen. There's a couple of Shyamalan movies that, for whatever other faults they have, are pretty good about constant tension building. Again, for all its other faults, The Village is a very universally tense movie up until the conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, the ending ruined that for me, the payoff at the ending. Outside of that, I kind of enjoyed the movie up to you see how everything pays off.
I mean, look, I'm not going to defend the twist that you get in that movie because it either works for you or it doesn't. It's just kind of one of those things. But everything else, I thought worked. I thought it did a really good job of building tension consistently, but it's a very hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, last one, and you knew one of these was coming. Sarah Mars from Laney Gossip, a story about the power of stories, particularly how folklore is often wielded against women.
Do you not understand how folklore works? There's no supreme being. The Illuminati do not control urban legends. Alright? That's not how this works. Every bit of urban legend grows organically. And sure, you can do what you can originally to say if you're trying to manipulate it, fair enough. But it does grow on its own. There's everyone who retells it twists it a little bit. I mean, there's if you play a game of telephone, is that the patriarchy trying to bear down on you? That's kind of what this is, just on a larger scale. That's a unbelievably stupid point to make about this movie.
It doesn't even make any sense. Okay, again, wielded against women. Who? Sarah Bellows? Her grandmother and her mother were also going after her. That wasn't just her brothers saying, "Oh, we got to keep her quiet because she's a girl." That's not. So it's like, so are they doing it against Stella? Actually, Robert, you said you wanted to talk about the relationship between Stella and her father a little bit earlier. I don't think we got around to doing that.
I suppose as a subplot, it at least needs to be touched on. One of the things with Stella is that her mother left in some kind of. Given how long ago it was, it seems to be almost kind of a postpartum thing, though I might be misreading some of the cues there. But her mother abandoned her and her father, and children, being the vicious little animals that they are, and they are, she got a lot of crap about it, and because the actual answer for her desire to abandon responsibility and family and loved ones and go be free and find herself was complicated, everyone tried to find a simpler sort of explanation, and children, again, being vicious, oh, it was your fault. Somehow, even though they know nothing of the situation. And it's a little bit of a... You get kind of a little bit of a hint of... I mean, a bit of it's foreshadowing for Sarah and what happened to her. But it's also, I think, a little bit of how some of these urban legends start, you know? Her mother just has a thing where she decides, I have to not be here anymore for whatever reason, and takes off, and to try and make sense of it, people start spinning ridiculous stories. And again, either because no one talks about the actual truth, or the truth is so complicated that people would rather believe the false narrative. And historically speaking, that is a human trait, and has been since human consciousness, basically. They spin out of stuff like that. And we don't see that one through to its conclusion. As far, we get her getting a bit of closure with her father. But, you know, another 40 years without, assuming that those events continue, if they actually do just leave town, they might come back and find that, the story is that she and her father murdered her mother, hid her in the basement, and then skipped town. Like, that's how these things kind of get going.
And I think that would be a nice little twist to add, just to see, like, what kind of story that would be spun to explain it. Because, like you said,
two of her best friends disappeared, and then one of their sisters, and her father left town with a book. After breaking out of jail and killing the policeman in charge of their security, that's what it looks like. It's not that hard to spin.
Yeah, and the imagination spins better stories than the truth.
Very true.
Yep. All right, so I believe that was the last one.
Yep.
All right. And thank you, reviewer, for shoehorning your agenda into a discussion about horror stories. Just always appreciated. You are clearly doing your entire profession a great service.
Yes, somebody's got to do it for every movie.
I know. There's always at least one. There's always at least one. I'm shocked there were... Let me put it this way. I'm shocked there were as many negative reviews of The Kitchen as there were, because given just how many times critics bend over backwards not to say a movie like that just sucks for fear of repercussion. Now, to tell you how bad it was, I think Ghostbusters has a more mixed score than The Kitchen. And Ghostbusters was terrible. Alright, on that note, let's go ahead and get plugs and get out of here. So, Alexis, do your thing.
Alright, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. We just wrapped up our time at the Kansas City Nerdlesque Festival, which was a lot of fun. Our next event, we are going to be going to Poplar Bluffs before too long for CMOCon. This is our first time working that. We're also going to be going back to the Cincinnati Comic Expo. That's going to be, I think, like our 5th year working that. Love that show. Always have a blast. That same weekend, I'm also sending my second team to Cape Girardeau for Cape Anime. This is a brand new event from the same crew that brings us Cape Comic Con every year in the spring. So we're excited to be going back to that and see what new stuff they can offer us. We just put a bunch of new stuff online, including our brand new ribbon chokers, which we are continuing to update and add more designs to. So go ahead and check that out. As we get closer to the fall season, we're going to start breaking out more of our horror-related things. I just released a new red rum-inspired hair barrette, which I'm very proud of. We're going to be looking for some more ideas for things like that. Again, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and we got our online stores on Etsy and Handmade at Amazon. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
All right, Jason?
Anybody looking to find me, you can find me reviewing and talking football over on the W2M network, where me and 3 other of my co-hosts do a roundtable of all things college football and NFL football. Also, just recently, I was on the Golden Sports Network doing a NFL review with Robert Foster. You can check that out. And I will be back here, as Mark says, the Prodigal Son returns, August 30th to review Zombie Tidal Wave with definitely Mark. And hopefully we can get Alexis to join us if she has it in time in her schedule. If not, it's going to be a fun time for me and Mark just to have somewhat of fun, because this movie looks atrocious. But it looks like we could have fun just totally dismantling it. And hey, it might be the gateway we get Mark to watch some horror movies going forward.
I would not hold my breath for that.
I don't think I will, but hey, maybe this is him dipping his toe in, getting prepared for it when we all get together to do the It review.
We just got to remind him, going to see Kitchen was far worse than going to see scary stories to tell in the dark.
And Alexa, did you say you was going to be in Cincinnati?
Yeah, in September.
Awesome. I might try to load up the wife and daughter and just drive out for the day because it's only like 2 hours for me.
Awesome. Yeah, Cincinnati Comic Expo is a really great show. We do very well there. They were one of the last Comic-Cons to have Adam West appear. He was there with Burt Ward.
Really check it out.
Okay. As for myself, this coming Saturday you can find me covering UFC 241. I'm going to do something stupid. Not new, but a new kind of stupid. As usual, you can follow my coverage in the MMA zone of 411mania.com. I'm also going to try at the same time to provide a live watch-along commentary track with Mark for the main card. So, it's going to be a challenge to see if I can listen to Mark, say things, and type something completely different all at the same time. I'm not sure my brain is up to that. I know there are people out there who can do it. I don't know that my brain will go in that many different directions. Let's see.
Should we also mention the Patreon that we're starting for the RIB?
Yeah, as well. That's been officially announced. We are, here at the Rattle Legend Broadcasting Network, launching a Patreon. I'm not sure exactly what's going up behind the metaphorical paywall. Well, it's a literal paywall. To the extent that a paywall isn't in itself a metaphorical thing. Boy, there's some linguistic logic for you.
I think you're getting off track there, dude.
We're gonna so I think what we have right now is some Screaming Boy extras. We're probably everything that is currently on the schedule and everything that normally comes out free will still be free. So, Damn You Hollywood, contemporary TV parties, things of that nature. But I think anything we do retroactively might go up. So some of our other TV parties for older shows will go up behind there. I don't know if watch-alongs might go back there. I'm not sure. Again, we've just launched it, and there's a few things we're still going to be figuring out what exactly works behind there. We're going to figure out what benefits we can offer you, good people. If I might suggest, there's a few things that we're going to talk about, but we might do some movie watch-alongs that'll go behind the paywall, and if you are a patron, you might get to choose what movies we watch for that. So, I don't know. We'll see. That is at patreon.com/Radulich, just RADULICH. So you can head on over there, and again, it's early days yet. That's a very new thing we're launching, so we're still hammering out some stuff, but be on the lookout for that. So again, pretty much everything that you like listening to, if you listen to it for free, will still be free, but there's probably going to be a few extra things that are going to go up behind there, so keep an eye out. Announcements coming in the future.
Mark tells me I get to get drunk and get on Patreon.
Listen to Drunk Jason, then.
I was going to say, wait, you get to get drunk and then get on Patreon, or you get to get drunk and then he's recording you and the recording is going on Patreon?
Yes, it's Mark. Mark, I just heard Mark wants Drunk Jason and for Patreon. I don't know the logistics of it, but I just know there's going to be me and alcohol and some kind of Patreon exclusive of me being intoxicated.
Okay.
I think it was I get drunk and me and Mark go down the rabbit holes of Wikipedia. Mark just starts going on Wikipedia and finding topics, and we just go down rabbit holes discussing whatever he clicks on.
Well, you consistently get more and more hammered. You know what? Go for it.
I know we also discussed the idea of doing a live coverage of the drone footage we're going to get for the Area 51 run, which from now what I've been hearing, apparently since 2 million people say they're showing up, I've heard the organizer actually wants to turn this into a music festival, like a big alien theme festival.
Did I hear Firefest?
That's exactly what I was thinking when I heard the news. I mean, seriously, how do you get a music festival for 2 million people going in the desert within a month?
I don't know. They do Burning Man every year still.
Well, apparently people are serious about going out. The hotels in the area have already said that they're completely sold out for that entire week.
Well, look, if people are going to show up, somebody's going to try to make money off of it.
Speaking of massive death, how do you guys feel about the hunt being canceled?
I only saw one trailer for it, so I'm not 100% certain.
What movie was that?
The Hunt.
From what I gather, the idea was that these people have been bought and placed in an area and they're being hunted for sport. But with all of the mass shootings that have gone on recently, the studio decided it was probably a good idea to shelve it.
Basically what it is surviving the game, updated with no iced tea.
Well, surviving the game in and of itself is an adaptation of a very classic short story, The Most Dangerous Game, which has had several film adaptations.
That's exactly what it's based off of.
Oh, was that the one where they were going to have a bunch of hyper-liberals actually figure out how to shoot guns at conservatives?
Yes.
Yes.
What a stupid idea. None of them know how to use a gun. Sorry. Political stereotyping aside.
We try to avoid politics on this channel for a reason, folks.
Yeah, look, we all have different perspectives. We've all agreed to respectfully disagree on a lot of stuff, so we're all happy to leave it there. All right, this coming week, let's see. There will be a source material. I'm not sure which one. I don't remember if they're airing the Superman Lobo one or if that's going to be later, because that's a little bit weird at times. There is no Danny Hollywood next week because the only movie of substance is the Angry Birds movie 2, and I suffered once already. So, look, the only thing I laughed at in that entire movie was the bald eagle taking a prolonged leak into the pool. That was it.
And even that was poorly timed.
That's why I thought it was funny, because it just doesn't stop. It just keeps going. In place of Damn You Hollywood next week will be a TV party for the DC Universe streaming platform, whatever they call it, Swamp Thing TV show. The Metal Hammer of Doom next week will be Thy Art Is Murder, which I assume is the name of the album, not the band. I don't know the band off the top of my head. My apologies. August 22nd will be On Trial for Wes Craven's 1982 Swamp Thing.
Hey, my birthday.
And then August 25th, we'll have the Screaming Boy reactions to D23. So keep on the lookout for that for this coming week here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. You can like the Radulich Broadcasting Network on Facebook. It's a good way to get constant updates. Or go on Twitter and harass Mark, which I encourage you to do.
Go on and make fun of him for not wanting to sit through scary stories to tell in the dark. Go ahead, poke his buttons.
Yeah.
Look, Okay, hang on. For all of you who hear this and have Twitter, go to @MarkRadulich, I believe that's his handle, and just send him either pictures or GIFs of the giant chicken from Family Guy. And I would just really like for his feed to be blasted with a few of those. So if any of you can hear this and feel like doing me a solid, that would make me happy.
Yeah, all 5 of you still listening, that would be great.
You
Oh, wow,
vastly
5?
overestimate our listeners.
So that's Jesse, Ronnie. Let's see, Jesse, Ronnie. That's about the only 2 I can think of that would still be listening.
I've got a brother who probably will. I have 3 brothers. I'm the oldest of 4. I assume at least one of them will listen to this. So if one of them does.
Maybe Chris Bailey. Maybe.
Yeah, okay, so Chris Bailey, if you hear this, the next time you interact with Mark, I just want you to make clucking sounds at him.
Sean, if you're listening, that goes for you too.
Just.
Oh, I know. Sean would harass him. So that covers all 5.
All right. Thank you, everyone, very much for listening to our shenanigans. That's always appreciated. That's what we've got coming up for this next week. You can also find me Sundays hosting the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Last week was a review of a pretty terrible card and a preview of UFC 241. This Sunday will be a review of 241, and that's it. There's one Saturday the UFC took off in the month of August, and it's the 24th. So Mark decided to not let me have a Saturday off, and I'll be doing alternate boxing commentary with him because I hate myself.
You're Mark's slave, and you know it.
No, my problem is I'm too honest. If I had less integrity, I'd just tell him sure and then not show up.
No, your problem is you're a battered wife and you can't leave him.
You know, that is probably also a not inaccurate description, so fair enough. So you can look forward to that in a couple of weeks. All right, that's going to do it for us. So on behalf of Alexis and Jason, I am Robert. Thank you again very much for listening, everyone. Stay safe out there, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is 4.125%. APR 4.22%. Call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Rate subject to change. Pay 0.88% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Dunkin' has a whole new line of handcrafted signature lattes. Blueberry Crisp, Caramel Craze, and Cocoa Mocha. They're so delicious, you'll realize that you've been spending a whole latte time drinking the wrong coffee. So even though you've been together for years, it's time to say goodbye to your ex. Coffee Place. Because you've got a latte love for Dunkin's signature lattes. Sipping is believing with Dunkin's new handcrafted signature lattes, like Blueberry Crisp, Caramel Craze, or Cocoa Mocha. America runs on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer.